There is a brutal law of money that nobody teaches you at school. In 2026, the first £100,000 you ever save is the only money in your entire life that you will build with 100% manual labor. Every single pound of it is dragged out of your own back. There is no wind at your back, no current beneath you, no silent partner doing half the work. It is just you, your discipline, and a mountain that does not seem to move. Economists call it static friction. It is the reason a heavy object is hardest to shift in the first inch. And it is exactly why so many people in Britain start saving, feel nothing happens for 2 or 3 years, and quietly give up. They mistake the silence for failure. It is not failure, it is physics. The first £20,000 is not built from clever investing. It is built from a single, unglamorous word. No. No to the financed SUV, sitting on the drive, quietly bleeding £400 a month. No to the London lunches that vanish into a contactless blur. No to the upgrade, the subscription, the treat yourself that costs a week of saving. Every pound in that first 20,000 feels like a physical sacrifice, because it is one. You are not investing yet, you are just refusing. And refusing is exhausting, because the whole culture around you is engineered to make you spend. Picture a massive iron flywheel, 10 tons of solid metal, mounted on a shaft, dead still. Your job is to spin it, so you put your whole body against it and push. You sweat, your feet slip, and for a long, humiliating stretch, nothing happens. The wheel does not seem to care that you exist. But here is the secret the physics knows, and your feelings do not. Every pound you save is a tiny packet of kinetic energy stored inside that metal. You cannot see it. You cannot feel it. But it is accumulating, quietly, inside the mass. The wheel is not ignoring you. It is remembering every push. Now, why is that first push so agonizing specifically in Britain? Because before you save a single pound, the system has already emptied your pockets. Rent, in most of the country, is the great wealth destroyer, swallowing a third or more of take-home pay before you have bought a loaf of bread. Then comes council tax. Then national insurance, skimmed off the top of every payslip before the money ever reaches you. And sitting behind all of it is the quiet thief the Treasury rarely says out loud: fiscal drag. Here is how fiscal drag works. Your personal allowance, the slice you earn, tax-free, has been frozen at £12,570. The 40% higher rate threshold has been frozen too. They do not rise with your wages, and they do not rise with prices. So every year, you get a pay rise just to stand still against inflation. A larger share of your income is quietly dragged into higher tax. You feel richer on paper and poorer in the account. HMRC does not need to raise a single rate to take more from you. It simply stands still and lets inflation do the collecting. When your monthly margin is this thin, hitting £100,000 does not feel like a goal. It feels like a 20-year sentence. That is the cage. And most people never find the door. So why this number? Why does £100,000 change everything? Because at £100,000, you hire your first silent employee. At a 7% annual return inside a low-cost global equity index fund, £100,000 generates £7,000 a year. Read that again. £7,000 produced by the money itself, while you sleep, while you argue, while you do absolutely nothing. That is roughly the same amount a typical British worker manages to save from an entire year of salary. You now have a second earner in the household who never asks for a holiday, never gets sick, and never hands in their notice. This is the moment the wheel reaches rotation speed. For years, you pushed, and it crept. Now, it is spinning fast enough to carry its own momentum, and a fast-spinning flywheel does something a still one cannot. It crashes straight through obstacles. A job loss, a broken boiler, a sudden emergency, the very shocks that would have flattened you in year one, now barely slow the wheel. You have built enough stored energy to absorb the hit and keep turning. That is escape velocity. Think of your career as a rocket launch. At the start, you are burning an enormous amount of fuel just to lift off the ground, fighting the full pull of the Earth's gravity. That is the first £20,000. That is the slog. But reaching £100,000 is reaching orbit, and in orbit, something miraculous happens. You can finally cut the engines. You are no longer fighting gravity. Gravity is now working for you, and the gravity of the entire global economy quietly pulls you forward, whether you push or not. And you feel it on any random morning. Not a birthday, not a bonus. Just the ordinary start of a working week, when it suddenly lands on you that your time is no longer a commodity owned entirely by a corporation. It has become an asset, and slowly, pound by pound, you are buying it back. None of this happens by accident. In 2026, if you want to grease the flywheel and outrun HMRC, there are two levers, and they are non-negotiable. The first is the ISA. You have an allowance of £20,000 every tax year, and inside that wrapper, your growth and your gains are completely shielded from the taxman. Fill it if you possibly can. Every pound of growth inside it is a pound fiscal drag can never touch. The second is your pension, and specifically the SIPP, the self-invested personal pension used through salary sacrifice. When you sacrifice salary into a SIPP, that money is diverted before income tax and before national insurance ever touch it. For a higher rate taxpayer being dragged toward that 40% band, this is the single most powerful move available. You are quite literally reclaiming money the freeze was designed to take and redirecting it into the wheel. That is the manual override. That is how you spin faster than the system can slow you down. And somewhere along the climb, the person changes. You stop being a saver and you become an owner. It is a quiet shift, but it rewires how you see the world. You stop scanning the news for cost of living updates because your survival no longer depends on the price of a weekly shop. You start reading the global growth reports instead because you now own a slice of that growth. The family in the home counties, who once feared the next bill, now watches the world economy the way a landlord watches a tenant. The anxiety of the wage earner is replaced by the patience of the owner. Same person, completely different relationship with money. And here is the quiet reward the owner never sees coming. The second £100,000 does not cost what the first one did. Not even close. The first was all muscle. The second arrives with the wind behind it. Because now, the flywheel is spinning at full speed, and it is throwing off energy of its own. At 7%, your money is already generating £7,000 a year before you have saved a single new pound. So, you are no longer climbing alone. You are climbing with a partner who never tires, and every year, that partner pushes harder than the last. This is the part nobody warns you about at the start, when the wheel felt like solid rock. That the same discipline that took a decade to build the first £100,000 might build the next in half the time, and the one after that faster still. The slog does not just end, it reverses. The mountain you were dragging yourself up quietly becomes a slope that carries you down. So here is the painful truth about the first £100,000. It is the hardest money you will ever make, and it is not close. It is built from sweat, from refusal, from 1,000 small sacrifices nobody claps for. It is a character test disguised as a savings target. But it is also the only money that ever truly matters, because it is the only money that can eventually buy your time back. Push the wheel, endure the silence. The first inch is agony, the last mile is momentum, and on the far side of £100,000, the machine finally starts pushing you. If you learn something, like and hit subscribe. See you in the next one.